Namaskar. Welcome to an episode of Rajneeti, our political stories and feedback for you coming up to the general election. Lots has been happening, and today to discuss with us the political scenario, we have the candidates for the Conservatives for Harrow West, Dr Anwara Ali. Welcome, Dr Anwara. How have you been and how's it been going for you?
Namaskar, MATV viewers. I've had a fantastic campaign, very positive on the doorstep, so really enjoying myself, and thank you for inviting me here tonight.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. You're so candid and you sort of really understand the pulse of Harrow, and we feel that your feedback last time and again hopefully today will give us the true sense of the atmosphere out there in the community. So whilst you've been campaigning, do you feel that there has been a gentle shift towards the Conservatives, or especially in your constituency, or has it been mixed so far?
No, definitely there's been a shift in my constituency. I think people they're telling me on the doorstep they're really fed up of the incumbent Labour MP who's been there for a couple of decades and hasn't really delivered any transformative change to Harrow West. And people want to change. But also they welcome our agenda, our conservative policy. So we respect people whichever way they voted in the referendum. What everybody on the doorstep in Harrow West are saying, that we just want to get over Brexit so that the government can actually concentrate on people's priorities. And in Harrow West, on the doorstep, the NHS comes up a lot. Crime has been increasing in the streets of Harrow West. And the schools are overstretched. And so, people are very positive because I come from an NHS background. I worked as a GP continuously for 22 years as an NHS GP. I've also been a counsellor, and I've delivered. And as a GP, I helped to form one of the first GP federations in the country. And that way we were able to bring in central government funding by doing pilot projects. We also have, I also helped to form one of the only GP care group in the country. And those are skills that I will be using in Harrow West to improve the National Health Service. But also, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has pledged to put £33.9 billion of funding into the NHS, of which 6.2 billion we'll be able to draw down this year, and that will help us to recruit more nurses as well as more doctors. And the NHS staff, after a long time, will be given a pay rise. So people who nurses, healthcare assistants and cleaners will be getting a 6.2% pay rise, and doctors will be getting 2.5%. And those are things that we need to do because the NHS is precious to everyone. I've served in the NHS on the front line as a GP for 22 years. And that's really important to me. So I want to see the funding come to the NHS. That's really important when we have young children and families. And so those are some of the things that have been coming up on the doorstep. And there is, we are getting Labour voters all the time switching over to us because they're scared of allowing Jeremy Corbyn and his people into Downing Street, because the last time Labour were in government, they left the country bankrupt, and then they had the audacity to leave a note to say there's no more money left. They spent people's money and then they said there's no more money left. That doesn't bode well.
That is exactly the issue that we've been sort of getting from people, their views. Even if you watch the debate on BBC One the other day, there was concerns regarding the promises that the Labour government are giving to the people to buy would be the wrong word, but to entice their vote. So being a doctor yourself, like you said, for 22 years you've been serving the public and you understand the pulse of the problems the NHS suffers. This 2.6 trillion investment in the NHS over the next 9 years, do you think it's a realistic figure that has been bandied about, or do you think there's a lot of promise to give money, but where is that money going to come from? Have you thought about what the Labour issue is?
It's just total electioneering, but Labour have got it wrong. The voters are very astute and realise that they're being lied to, and we must never treat voters as fools. Okay, we have promised 33.9 billion, which is doable, of which 6.2 billion I've said already this year. But alongside giving money to the NHS, we also need to transform our NHS to actually work for us because more and more people now are living longer because of the advancement in medicine. So we need to transform our NHS so it's much more receptive to those to the elderly age group as well. And alongside not just kind of transform the NHS to become much more efficient, we also need to have public health campaigns side to side so that people can look after them. So when you have a minor illness, you don't actually need to go and see a doctor. It may be that you can just go to your pharmacy and use the pharmacy first voucher. And then, you know, self-lifting illness. So we also need to use our NHS wisely. So I think Labour's promises are false and they should be taken as such, because this is just total kind of electioneering on their part. And can I take this opportunity also to say that the NHS will never be for sale. Every time there has been an election, since time immemorial, the Labour Party will say the Tories will sell the NHS. But the fact is, the NHS has been there for 70 years. And out of those, we have been in government for 40 years. We have been the custodians of the NHS. And another fact is, we have to have a strong economy to be able to fund strong public services. Labour has never been able to run the economy. As I alluded to earlier, the last time they left in 97, they left, in 2010, they left the country bankrupt. Under the Conservatives, we have one of the lowest unemployment since 1970s. We have 1.8 million more women who are now in work. And that is so important. I say that as a woman because 50% of the population are women. And therefore, where women want to work, whether they want to work part-time or full-time, we need to be able to give those opportunities for people to tap into that job market so that the country can be more productive, so people can bring home the pay packet they need to raise their families, to give them a good education, and to put the food on the table. So it's important because we Conservatives believe that we have to have a strong economy, we have to have thriving businesses, and we always try to cut business taxes. So given that we've had, since 2010, we have had, and we have to be honest, that we've had to, in order to balance the books, we've had to have austerity, but the times of austerity are now over. We now need to spend money to get the economy, continue growing our economy. And we want to put in the infrastructure. So we have a fantastic infrastructure building project with HS2, and we will be supporting our SME businesses on our businesses, because businesses create jobs and that creates opportunity and prosperity. And, with Brexit over and done with, we will be able to look at the wider world and do deals. We already have a deal with South Korea. We've got other deals in the line with Canada, with Australia, with the USA. And those are good things because there are so many more opportunities out there. And Britain has always looked for those opportunities. And we'll take those opportunities and make sure that Britain, prospers even more than it is now.
So, whilst you've been campaigning for your seat for Harrow West, obviously you've met a lot of people there. According to the statistics here, especially the ones that came up in The Guardian, Harrow West is one of the 5th most diverse Harrow itself, but with Harrow West being in it, it's one of the 5th most diverse boroughs in the country. When you've been interacting with the people of Harrow West, why do you think that you can make the difference? And Labour has been holding that seat for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your background and why you will bring that difference to Harrow West.
Okay, so as you can see, I'm of British Bangladeshi origin. I'm a NHS GP, a former counsellor. I'm also a mother and a wife. And I think that speaks to all the electoral colleges. And what I see and what people tell me on the doorstep, that the incumbent Labour MP really hasn't embedded himself in all the diverse communities that are present in Harrow West. In Harrow, you can walk down the high street along Harrow on the Hill, and you'll see a shop. That's there's Costa, or there's a little coffee shop, or there's a little grocery, and from India to Afghanistan to Saudi Arabia, all the countries and colours are represented in that. And I think the MP has to be able to really engage with all those communities and bring them on board and give leadership to Harrow West, which he's completely failed to do.
Yes, because again, obviously when we meet people within a certain political arena, one wants to actually know the matter before one brings you to questioning. And you're right, because if you look at figures, lately the crime rate between 2010 to 2018 has been okay. It hasn't improved, but it's actually gone down. And £170 million have been cut from the council budget. We are always wondering, what does the local MP do about such a massive cut? And if there's not enough policing, how does the crime sort of matters work? And have you had complaints about that?
Yeah, absolutely. People are really angry because there's a lot of burglary, especially house burglary around sort of Christmas, Diwali, when burglars know that people have jewellery in the house because they want to dress up for parties and so forth. But the Metropolitan Police budget is a devolved budget. The government gives Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, who's Labour, and then Harrow West has had a Labour MP. He should have been able to speak to Sadiq Khan and bring more police to Harrow West streets, and he hasn't done that. He's suddenly woken up. Now it's election time. He's out there and he's saying he's going to do his Tory cuts. But hang on, it's not a Tory cut. Sadiq Khan, the London Labour mayor, has money to have a huge media operation, to even give money to GQ magazine. Sorry, GQ magazine, for singling you out. But he hasn't got money to give Harrow West to keep the residents of Harrow West safe. So he's had a distinct lack of leadership, and he's become complacent, and he's not in touch with the voters. I don't think he ever was. He won on a landslide. He's never made those engagements and really got himself get to know his communities. He's completely out of touch with ordinary people. This guy is a career politician. He doesn't know what it's to strive to work as a junior doctor and start from the first steps of the rank, how to manage a team of people, how to manage employees, how to manage the budget, how to pay salaries, how to meet NHS targets in your work life, because he's not had to do that. And the people of Harrow West have been fantastic residents, have gullibly they've voted him, and there's not been any accountability. But this time round they want to change. They are holding him to account, and they want to change. And and in me they see a fresh pair of eyes with ideas, because I think he's also overplayed the local boy card. But being born local and what have you, that's not an achievement. That's just his parents had good sense to have him there. But in order to deliver for a constituency, you need to have somebody with open mind who has the national picture and international picture, so that you can take ideas, benchmark ideas and put those and bring those into your own borough and say, actually, are police the only answer to crime? No, police are one part of the answer, but there are other things we need to do. What are the root causes of crime? Why do people end up in crime, a life of crime? Is it drugs? Is it other social problems? So you need to be able to work with a multidisciplinary approach. One of the things I've done is the social prescribing scheme in the borough that I live in at the moment. And what we do, that's in Tower Hamlets. And so what we've done is the social prescribing scheme has reduced the A&E attendance rate for people who are petty crimes and burglary and what have you, who end up with knife crimes. By having somebody there, a social prescriber is somebody who will signpost you to. So if you've got a drug problem, they'll link you up with a drug rehabilitation program. If you're homeless, they will link you up with the council's homeless service and get you rehoused. And why did you lose your housing in the first place? If you're having problems with getting employment, they will help you onto an employment scheme. So it's important to look at this in a multifaceted way and see how you can help that person or individual who has ended up in a life of crime. And it's to bring these ideas from across the country and international. What are these things that are working in New York for a start? So I know when Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York and the crime rates were huge, high. And one of the things he said, actually, you need to have that worked, absolutely worked, is that you have to stop petty crime. Because if you stop somebody at the beginning of the crime cycle, petty crime, then it stops them going on to a worse crime. And if you can rehabilitate it early. So you need to be, you need to have somebody who's not just, in a little pigeonhole and not looking outside the borough. You need to have a wider vision. And Harrow West, really, if I had been the MP for Harrow West for 22 years, the streets of Harrow West should be paved with gold.
True. So it's a very interesting concept that Dr. Anwara has mentioned here, the social prescriber. The fact that, you know, it's very easy, and I've seen on Rajneeti over the last few months, a lot of the political perspective is, oh yeah, we need more police on street, but very well said that if you were to bring an actual change by bringing someone in to deal with those specific issues, that would be a better solution. I remember speaking to Dr. Anwara about something else in terms of engaging the youth. I remember the last time we discussed very briefly the matter regarding having more cultural centers and art centers that did offer youth opportunities to come and specialize on skills and learn things. I mean, Harrow West, I don't know if it is actually even encouraging that. I know that the Harrow Arts Centre, for instance, is actually crumbling. You feel that MPs, especially Mr. Thomas, has he done anything to improve that?
Not that I know of. He hasn't talked about it, and nobody has said that he's done anything. If you look at it, you know, how diverse and multiculturally, how rich Harrow West is with its residents. You know, people from all over the world live in Harrow West. There should be a, you know, multicultural arts and culture centre bang in the middle of Harrow. And that would be a way of engaging with the youth, because our youth are so expressive, so, you know, they're so artistic, from, you know, from dance to music to rapping. And if they had a focal point, then they would go there and they would put all the energy into being creative. And that's the job of an MP, to be, you know, to give leadership, to bring that kind of thing. So, you know, one of the things I will do is to look at the Arts Centre, which actually the London, the Labour Council is part of their estate, as to why is it crumbling, what can we do, you know, and I will draw in, you know, businesses to actually support that, as well as the council. We should also look at businesses' corporate social responsibility, and they'd be very happy to support arts and culture. It's something I used to be a trustee on the Olympic London, the Olympic Legacy list, and what we try to do is the opportunities of engaging with people and sports after the Olympics is finished, to actually capture that moment, you know, when the Olympics came, that few weeks of buzz, is how do you then use it as a hook to continue getting people engaged in sports, because obesity is a national problem in this country and most developing countries. So we need to look at how we can, again, through arts and culture, engage with our youth, because it's important to give them a space to be creative. They can't create if they don't have that space. And Harrow West deserves and should have a fantastic place where they can do that. And that's one of the things I'll be looking to look at, is to rejuvenating, redeveloping the Arts and Culture Centre.
That's really important, and I hope that you're able to, because as you said, I mean, CSR initiatives are such an important aspect of local businesses. I mean, there's huge businesses that go on in Harrow West, and I'm sure if they saw their corporate social responsibility being encouraged by their local MP, it would change the face of Harrow West. Tell us a little bit about this current Labour manifesto proposition to do a 4-day working week. How does that realistically work, and do you think, you know, these promises to the public to entice them are realistic?
It's absolutely and utterly ridiculous. The very people that Labour purport to help, it will actually affect them in a very detrimental way. The last time Labour had a 3-day or 4-day working week, we weren't probably alive. You know, we weren't born at that time, and the lights went out and so forth. There is no other nation that I know that has a 4-day working week. In fact, in the UK, we're very lucky. We have a 5-day working week. Most countries actually have a 6-day working week. I know where my origins are in Bangladesh, that it's a 6-day working week. There is no 2-day weekend. And it will affect, imagine, you know, they say to be, the Labour claims they're the friends of the NHS and friends of education and so forth. How on earth are we going to keep up our public services if we're going to be working 4 days a week? Do we stop becoming, being ill on the 3 days that, if we have a 4-day working week, what are we going to do for the other 3 days? It's really going to hit the people on the lowest scale of salary. So I think it's a it's complete madness. It just doesn't stack up economically at all.
You mentioned some figures. I mean, being in the NHS really up close and personal, you mentioned some figures that will work in terms of how the Conservative manifesto proposes to bring about a positive change to the doctors and the nurses' lives, and in terms of bringing nurses when there is need for it from sort of qualified backgrounds and from abroad. What were those figures that the Conservative manifesto was suggesting in terms of the growth in terms of the doctors and their salaries?
Okay, so since we've been in government in coalition and then on our own as a Conservatives, the NHS, even when we inherited a bankrupt country, the NHS's budget was ring-fenced both by David Cameron and then by Theresa May, and that is a fact. I have been working in the NHS for 22 years. The biggest cuts were actually made before Labour left power, under Alan Johnson, the then Health Secretary. So David Cameron ring-fenced the NHS budget, as well as Theresa May put more money into the NHS, and Boris Johnson has placed 33.9 billion. Nurses, healthcare assistants, cleaners and doctors will all get a pay rise. 6.2 billion will come to us this year. And then also mental health services, which are really important to me, will also be receiving from that 33.9 billion. There will be 2.6 billion for mental health services, and that's really important because mental health has not had the importance or the high profile that it should. And we know 1 in 4 people suffer with depression, so it's really important to catch it early, and help people to get better so they can continue their lives. Under the with our manifesto, you would have also noticed that we will have an NHS visa. So where we need to recruit more nurses, let me make this clear actually, that we're going to be recruiting 50,000 nurses in total, and out of that 30,000 will be new nurses, but 20,000 will be those nurses who have taken a career break, or in a longer break to bring up their family or to go and study. So they will be given that. Midwives will receive a bursary to encourage them to take up midwifery or go or come into midwifery. And we will also, the NHS visa that we'll have, which will allow to us for anybody from overseas, whichever country, whether you're from one of the Commonwealth countries or Europe, you can apply for an NHS visa, and that will be very streamlined, expedited. As long as you have the skills and qualification, and there's a job here, then you'll be able to come on an NHS visa.
Yes.
So those things are really important, because we have thought about after Brexit, and to safeguard our precious NHS. That is why we've introduced the NHS visa.
So this is again one thing that has been mentioned by the Prime Minister in the debate on Friday, and again today Dr Anwara talks about it. The 50,000 nurses, immigration based on point system like Australia, will work according to sort of seasoned politicians and people that are willing to make that difference in areas that they are sort of campaigning in. Now, we talked about obviously the NHS. Education is also a big concern. Harrow West has some of the finest schools in the country. Labour apparently wants to get rid of free schools, wants to get rid of, well, if they don't want to use the word get rid of, they are saying, oh, we want to reduce the number, we want equality in education. What's your view on this, and how would schools like Harrow in your constituency flourish with this kind of behaviour?
It's totally dictatorial. Okay, we don't want to live in a nanny state. Parents don't want to live in a nanny state. What parents want is a choice for their children. We all want to give our children the best education, be it a vocational or non-vocational, whether they want to go into higher degree or they want to become electricians or plumbers. It's about allowing the people to have a choice. It's not about the state dictating. It's not about the Conservative government dictating that you can have, you should have X, Y, and Z. And I think that, parents on the doorstep are really not happy about, Labour's policy, and they'll be voting for Conservatives. My party and I wholeheartedly support free schools, faith schools. Okay, some of our best school results at the moment currently are those schools that are free or faith schools which are run by parents. and local residents. So we totally support that. And also we want to give people a choice. So we want to have fantastically state schools, but side to side, if a parent wants to send the children to a private school or a grammar school, we want them to have that choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if parents are not doing that well and they want to still try and get them to the best school possible, the fact that Labour wants to get rid of academies and grammar schools is
everything. They want to get rid of grammar schools, academies, private schools. There should be no choice. So it will be total dictation. And that is not what we want for our children. I have a teenage boy and I want to have the choice of giving my child the best education. And I know you have 2 children, so you want to be able to have that choice.
Yeah.
We're not living in Russia where it's all dictated to us. We want to give our parents a choice of what kind of schools they want to send their schools to. And many of us, I know certainly when I grew up that I actually was educated in a state school. But I also went to a faith school in the evening to learn about my religion and all religions. And I think it's choice. It's about giving choice. We in the Conservative Party believe that we should respect individuals, we should respect parents and give them the choice.
Yes.
We're not about holding hands and nanny state.
So when we are at this crux where we're 4 or 5 days away from the destiny of this country changing, will it be in the hands of someone who wants to bring social change to the point where people don't have a choice whether you're doing well or not, you're supposed to be suffering? That I think is obviously difficult if you're watching from a point of view where you're going to make a choice or where you are an opinion maker. I also wonder about this matter to do with the taxes and I know a lot of friends and family who have businesses or who are doing well and they feel penalized by the tax rising. We're already at 45, now to go up to 50. According to the Conservative manifesto, how are businesses going to be promised a future vis-a-vis Labour?
So with regards to tax, we've done a triple lock. So national insurance, tax and VAT, we've triple locked it because whilst we want our economy to grow, we know that we post-Brexit we want to invest in our public services and our infrastructure, but at the same time we want to keep taxes as low as possible. So that's really important because businesses want to be able to plan around that. Also, under Conservatives, throughout our history, we've had the lowest rates on business, and that's important because that encourages entrepreneurship. That encourages businesses to create prosperity, to create jobs. So we are a low tax, party, and I think it shivers through businesses when they think, well, actually, we're already paying. We've got the 45p tax band, and we've got the kind of 12.5p, and then now Labour want to bring it to 50%. It's just not acceptable because that's exactly what the last Labour government did. In fact, they keep on saying that they're on the side of the working people, but if you look at it, when they were in power, they got rid of the lower tax band, which was the 10p. When we've been in power, we've raised that threshold to 12.5. So the first 12,500 you earn, you don't pay any tax on it. Labour also got rid of the marriage allowance. So one of the things I've been campaigning for now, which will continue, that they should bring back the marriage allowance, and marriage can be, between heterosexuals, homosexuals, people living in partnerships. All of those partnerships, whatever form, will be recognised and should be recognised. So, I think, Labour's proposals are crazy, and I think the country will vote very decisively, and they'll vote for a majority Conservative government, so that businesses can prosper, so that communities can thrive, and we can really take our country forward.
So 9 years in power, according to the Conservative manifesto, the plan is to halve unemployment rate and to double personal allowance to 12,600, right? Labour proposes that, according to their manifesto, the common man will be well off. According to our survey, and obviously Rishi Sunak, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, he has said in response to John McDonnell that everyone will be paying higher taxes to the tune of 2,400. Now, what have you noticed in terms of the promises and what John McDonnell has said? Where does this figure come from, and do you think this even makes sense to the common person, or is he being fooled?
Well, the IFS has already said that Labour's figures don't stack up. And then if you look at what Labour is saying, so they're going to bring in a 4-day working week. They're going to tax businesses more. McDonald has already come out and said that his enemies are business. Okay, so if his enemies are business, then who's going to create jobs and how is the economy going to be fueled?
They have a problem with a capitalist state.
Yeah. And so those are some of the things that they've said. And if you look at Labour's record in power, every time they've been in power, and that's very few times, they've left the country economically worse off and bankrupt. They keep on saying that they're on the side of the ordinary person. But how are they on the side of the ordinary person when the last time they were in power, and I reiterate this fact, they got got rid of the lower band of taxing and made it much more complicated and raise rates and business rates and taxes. So it just doesn't stack up. It doesn't add up.
But here's the question though, according to your constituency, Harrow West, 50,000 people actually showed up to vote in the last elections. And, there wasn't a massive resounding success for your opposition Labour Party person who actually won. Do you think though that because of Boris Johnson and the people believing maybe we can't trust him, you're going to suffer, or you think that your own personal merit is going to swing votes your way?
So I think my personal merit is definitely going to swing votes my way, because basically I speak to the multicultural, diverse constituents. But also on the doorstep, I haven't experienced people saying they don't trust Boris. There's a huge support for Boris on the ground. And the choice for people is putting Jeremy Corbyn, who doesn't believe in our country, who doesn't believe in protecting our country. We've had incidents where Russia poisoned people in Salisbury, and Jeremy Corbyn would get rid of all our defence systems. He on television debate, he wouldn't say he wants another referendum, but he won't say which side of the referendum he's going to campaign for.
No, we waited for an hour.
People do not trust Jeremy Corbyn, but they do trust Boris. And when it comes to meritocracy in Harrow West, what people have engaged with me, they want to see a change in Harrow West. Under the current incumbent Labour MP, Harrow West has declined. The streets are dirty, although it still has one of the lowest crime rates. This crime is rising. There was a knifing incident yesterday. So those kind of things need to be addressed. The schools and NHS services are overstretched. And what I will be able to do is use my experience both in the NHS, in business, as a councillor, and working with a majority Conservative government to bring those resources and give leadership to Harrow West and make our beautiful constituency one of the best constituencies, so that it will be a beacon constituency. And Labour in Harrow West has failed. It's a Labour council and a Labour MP, and they've completely failed. And if you look at Hillingdon, which is next door, and if you look at their services, how they run the council, how clean the streets are, low crime rates, and it's just next door to me. That's what we need to do. That's what I want to do for Harrow West.
That's really good sentiments, and I think that people of Harrow West probably deserve a change. Obviously, I've tried to balance things out from the Conservative and the Labour perspective. I do think that some of the goals, and we obviously discussed it, when we were talking, that Jeremy Corbyn means well, but there is a lot of people that have been upset by him. I cannot be in a discussion with a politician and not mention the fact that as an Indian, I've always felt upset, and then you've been campaigning, and in your meetings, I'm sure you've had people mention to you that Mr. Corbyn is anti-India. Mr. Corbyn has anti-Semitic views in his party. As we're coming to the end of our conversation, I really want to very briefly touch upon those matters, because obviously it concerns me, and like me, there might be hundreds of others that you've met. And vis-a-vis, how will the Conservatives deal with people like us?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's come up on the doorstep a lot. So it's not hundreds, it's thousands of people are really, really angry about the meddling of the Labour Party in a colonial way and passing a resolution against India. We in the Conservative Party do not meddle in the sovereign matters of India or any nation. Okay, so let me be clear to everyone out there. My party and I do not meddle in the sovereign matters of India or any other nation. it is India's choice what they do with the regional problems and how they deal with that. Secondly, in terms of the Labour Party, well, I don't need to tell you about the anti-Semitism, but now the anti-Indian, where are they going to stop next? I've had the incumbent Labour MP has put out a newspaper gazette showing himself on one side and a picture of a woman's profile, I believe my profile, in black. The man is not only sexist, but he's also racist, so he's no different to his party. The terminology now used for that is, dog whistle, misogynist. So he's sexist and he's racist. So I urge you all to make your voice heard and your vote count, and come out on the 12th of December, this Thursday, and vote Conservative and support me in Harrow West. So together we can make Harrow West a beautiful constituency and return it to its former glory.
That's quite passionate. It's been a very interesting hour with Dr. Anwara Ali. There are a lot of issues that Harrow West faces, and there's time for a change in Harrow West, according to Dr. Anwara. And I'm sure, one has to be positive, passionate, and one cannot be complacent. Obviously, the Conservative Party needs to understand that people want a change. They want Brexit done, like you said. You need to make that change in your constituency as well. And I hope that Conservatives are being supportive. And, 12th of December would say it all. In terms of us here at MATV, we are delighted that you came on board. You discussed all the concerns of the members of the public and the people that you've met with. Any last words for our viewers before we say goodnight?
Namaskar. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I reiterate, please go out and vote on the 12th of December, which is this Thursday. Obviously, I'm going to say vote Conservative, support me, so that we can together change Harrow West. Namaskar.
So, this is Darshi Joshi. You've been watching Rajneeti. 12th of December is the fate of our country. So go out there and vote कीजिए. आपको अपने देश को बदलना है तो बदलाव पहले आपसे शुरू होगा. So, thank you. Namaskar. Have a good evening.